So my name is Talesh Seeparsan. It's a little bit of a unique spelling, and my company, which just celebrated 10 years, is Bit79. I know that sounds impressive, but the company is just me and maybe one or two other people, so it's nothing fancy. My Twitter is _Talesh, and usually if you want to get in touch with me, that's the best way to get in touch with me. So 10 years of Magento. I've been doing a lot of consulting, but that time I've also focused a lot about security, because I think defending Magento stores is one of the most important aspects of running a store that not much people pay attention to. And if I could push a little bit more attention towards it, it would be good. That being said, this talk, being a technical talk, has some focus on the merchant side of things, maybe a little bit less on the developer side of things. So just quick survey. How many of you work for a merchant in a technical or non-technical sense? You work for a merchant, or you're representing a merchant here today. And what about agencies or just developers who, consult for merchants or contract to merchants? So kind of even split. What I'll do is I'll try to make this, beneficial to both sides, but it's going to be a lot of merchant-focused talk. Security is a very complex topic, and we could just deep dive into this thing forever, and I'm going to bore you until your eyes start bleeding. So for this talk, what I'll try to do is keep it a little bit high level, and I'm going to start linking to more information, because one, I don't want to bore you, and two, I don't want to give you half the story. So the most important slide, if you're going to take photos of slides, I'll get out of the way, is this one. The slides are already, oh wait. Actually, the slides will be online after this talk. I just realized I didn't upload it. So take a photo of this if you need to, and grab the slides, because the slides are going to have links to much deeper information, talks I've given in the past, and resources that I think will be beneficial to you once you start thinking a little bit deeper about what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's just jump right into it. Magento security for merchants. Let's start with a foundation, just something that everybody in this room could agree on, and we're not going to have any conflicts about. Hackers exist. I don't think anybody has a problem with that here. And if you listen to the news, they all look like this. They all look with hoodies, and they sit in front of their laptop, and they hack into your store. But yeah, I'm sure, I know what you're thinking. It's like, Talesh came all the way here to Singapore to tell me hackers exist. I mean, not exciting in the slightest. But let's just revel in the simplicity of this for a second, because it's going to get really confusing and cloudy in the next few minutes. So if you're a business owner, you're a merchant, hackers exist. Okay, so this poses a threat to my business. It's a risk. I have to be concerned about it. It's a risk. But what's the risk to a merchant from hackers? Think about that for a second. Are you thinking about a definition, or are you thinking about examples? Let's run through some examples, because most times when you talk about risk from hackers, people come up with examples. So maybe credit card fraud. That's a simple one. You run a business. Basically what credit card fraud is, you run a business, a hacker is going to come in, or someone with nefarious designs comes in, uses a stolen credit card, purchases your inventory, you send it to them, then the original owner of the credit card disputes the charge, gets their money back, and you're out of inventory and you're not paid for it. That's what credit card fraud. But is that a risk for you? Let's say you sell pencils at 5 cents a piece to you, and you only send orders of like a couple dollars each. I mean, how much of a risk is credit card fraud to you? Obviously, if you're a luxury Singapore retailer and someone could check out with a few $1,000s worth of goods in one cart, yes, credit card fraud is a huge risk for you. But if you're selling pencils, it's not really. So if you're a business owner, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what this credit card fraud risk is. Even if you think about if credit card data is stolen from my store, I mean, as a business owner, so what? The credit cards are gone. Maybe I might be fined. I don't know. We don't really know. it's hard to define these things for a business owner. Maybe, as an agency, you come to a business owner and say, well, we need to do these things to prevent credit cards from being stolen on our site. Okay? And it's going to cost you $10,000. Now, the business owner might say, well, you know what? We've never had credit cards stolen from our site. And only 5% of our transactions are credit cards, and the rest is, our own payment system or PayPal. So, is it worth $10,000 building this software to protect our site? So, as you can see, even this customer data stolen is similar. As you can see, when you start talking about risk and security, it starts getting very difficult to estimate what's going on for a business owner. And permit me one example. It's a little bit hard to see. If you ask me, what's the effort to climb that mountain? I'm like hackers exist. I know that mountain's there. But there's just way too much in the way. There's too much clouds. There's too much fog. There's no clear definition of what's happening. And it's impossible to determine effort. Okay? So, we just what do we do? Remember when we said, hackers exist, and we were just all so comfortable in the fact that it was simple? That was a fun time 2 minutes ago. Anyway, I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. The way to approach this for business owners, and if you're an agency, for you to speak to your merchants. And mind you, this is a really good way to, get into your merchants' really good books by being, a little bit proactive with this, saying, hey, you know what? We've been thinking about this for your business. The way to approach this is to rephrase it a little bit and also look at it from a merchant's point of view. We're not going to talk about risk. Throw that entire word risk out the window. We don't want to talk about risk from hackers. Instead, what we're going to talk about is loss events. Every other talk you attend today, be it email marketing or whatnot, is going to talk about profit events, where it allows a business to make more money and profit in a better way. What I'm doing in this talk is we're going to defend the company from losing money, loss events, losing inventory, losing customers, losing sales. So when you start phrasing it as avoiding the severity and frequency of loss events from hackers, then businesses and merchants would have a better idea of what applies. So instead of saying credit card fraud, we talk about loss of inventory. That's something you could put a number against, okay? Instead of talking about instead of talking about credit card data stolen, loss of sensitive data. And luckily, in our industry, we've gotten to a point where a lot of these things have been formalized with GDPR and whatnot, the fines and whatnot. So we have hard numbers against what we could lose as a merchant, or your customer who is a merchant, that they could lose. And here's a big one. Loss of customer data is loss of brand trust. And this is an uncanny thing. Losing brand trust is something that could ripple for many years. And it could have a serious loss effect on your business for many years. And you lose brand trust when customers find out you've been hacked. Okay? And this is something that you could quantify and has been quantified by a lot of research in the field. So we're not talking about risk, we're talking about what the merchant can lose. And if you're a merchant, this is an exercise you should do. List out your loss events. List out what loss events can happen from poor security on your site and sort it. And this is where you start having, this is your first step into the title of this talk is meaningful discussions about security with your developers. First, quantifying and prioritizing your loss events is the first thing you should do as a merchant. And the thing about brand trust, let's just put a pin on this because I'm going to come back to this. This is a very important one. Loss events. So just as a merchant, just write them all down. Write them all down and prioritize them. Which is the biggest loss event you want to avoid? and which ones that it's not too bad if you lose like X because insurance is going to cover it. Okay. Now we're going to get to a point where we need to have meaningful discussions with our developers. The next step is trying to figure out what threats on the internet will trigger these loss events. And as a merchant, this is something you may need to speak with your developer about. And if you're an agency or developer, this is like, this is where you start encouraging your merchant to have further discussions about it. InfoSec community likes to call it threat modeling, and there's a ton of information out there. I'm not going to get into it right now because we will be here for hours. Just a couple pointers. When you start getting into threat modeling, a couple things to pay attention to. Get the people in your organization who have a deep domain knowledge and a deep technical knowledge. So typically somebody on the merchant side with a deep domain knowledge and somebody on the agency or technical side of the merchant with a deep technical knowledge. I personally like the way Microsoft does it, and their name for it is architectural risk analysis. It's very easy to find books and information about this, and it's something you could do on your own. When it comes to Magento stores, asset-centric approach is better than most of the others because we're looking at our assets, be it our customers or be it our systems, our credit card information, our inventory is also an asset, and taking that as the center of what we analyze threats from is the best option. And there are a whole bunch of processes with strange names like Stride and Pasta and Octave and whatnot. Just don't worry too much about them. The most important thing you could do is have someone with a deep domain knowledge and someone with a deep technical knowledge talking about the threats based on what loss events you're trying to avoid. And it's important that you have this discussion in context of the loss events, and that's why I started with that. Because, sorry, wrong slide. Quick aside, this is how threat modeling goes. You look at the assets, you figure out what the architecture is, how they connect, and decompose the application, identify threats. All of this stuff, there's a lot of information on the internet to read. Does not take long, and it's not difficult, but it's absolutely necessary because if you don't do this, you would not be able to have a proper conversation with your developers as to what are we trying to do when it comes to Magento security. So we've done loss events. We've listed the things that could affect our business negatively in descending order, with the most important one at the top. And we've done our threat modeling, which threats can trigger this. It's really important, the last one here. Oh, what did I do? The last one here, rate threats. What did I do? The last one, rate threats. It's this is, the sorting for the second column. It's important that you rate your threats according to what's important to your business, what loss events you're trying to avoid, okay? So if losing credit cards is not a big deal for your business, but the threat for it is high, it wouldn't rank very high for your business, okay? And at this stage, once a merchant has this priority list of what they're concerned about, then it's time to have meaningful discussions with your developers. Because without this, you're just hoping for the best. You're just hoping you don't get hacked. You're hoping your business doesn't lose money or anything like that. I think having this table is a priority if you're going to have discussions with your developers. And if you're on the agency side, going to a merchant and saying, hey, look, we have this really great idea. Let's establish this information for your business. And let's talk about what threats you want to avoid and what could affect your business the worst. It shows investment as an agency or as a developer in what your merchant's doing. And trust me, they really appreciate it when you come to them with this sort of stuff because I've done the agency side of things for ages. So this is more merchant focused. This is what a merchant needs to establish. And you start having these meaningful conversations based on what's important to merchants. And for me, looking at stores that have been hacked or merchants with security problems, the vast majority never had conversations about security. Not meaningful conversations, some of them just never spoke to the developers about security. They just kind of assumed everything was okay. Unfortunately, hoping for the best is a useless strategy when it comes to defending your stores. There's no reason why you should not be at least attempting to have a conversation, if not meaningful conversations. So the goal here for today is to make sure that you have the tools to start these meaningful conversations, either as an agency starting your merchant along this path, or as a merchant being aware of what you should be doing if you want to extract the most value from your developers and agencies. The next two steps of this, luckily, are very simple. Filling out the defenses and the effort. This is where the developers come in. You start looking at what defenses will be protecting against each threat. And you only choose the ones that, to start with, the ones that are important to the merchant. So the merchant is investing in defenses that will protect against their biggest losses, as opposed to spending a significant amount of time on loss events that may not matter to this merchant. And the nice thing about the Magento community is that there's so many different ways of implementing Magento for different sorts of fields and domains that this is going to be different for every merchant. Okay? I think this is self-explanatory. As a developer, you're going to start looking at defenses that would apply to each event that the merchant's trying to avoid. Luckily for us, threats, the entire threat modeling process, threats follow patterns. If someone wants to steal credit cards, they're going to find a way to write a file to your server and skim credit cards. If they want to do inventory, if they want to steal inventory, they will do a couple test runs on a credit card with small value items and then hit you for like a couple $1,000s, okay? These threats follow patterns, and luckily for us, there are tried and true defensive strategies that we can implement, but we can't determine which strategies we should be implementing first or at all without doing loss event and threat modeling, okay? And it usually goes like this, like, as a developer, you figure out what defense you're gonna put in place, and you tie it directly to which loss event we're trying to avoid on the merchant side of things. And this gives a merchant a significant amount of confidence that what they're building, what they're paying developers for, is directly related to what works best for them, okay? Even for some defenses that you may implement, it may defend against 3 or 4 different things that the merchant is concerned about. And having this discussion and filling this thing out is, in my personal opinion, one of the most important things you could do as a merchant or as an agency who is responsible for a merchant's store. It would avoid, I'd say, 99% of the problems we've ever seen with any Magento store. And we don't see that much to begin with, but the thing is, the ones we do see is just from people who just never had these discussions, never prioritized a list, never talked about what the developers are doing to protect the store. And it's always about, what we could throw in to bring more customers in, and not looking at the back end and what may be falling out. Okay? One word of warning, snake oil. Unfortunately, in InfoSec, there is a lot of amazing marketers who are going to sell you the best thing that will protect against everything. And it's going to cost you a lot of money, but it'll protect, your site's going to be unhackable, and it's going to be amazing. You should be aware of these, and the only way you could be aware of someone trying to sell you something, if it applies to your business or not, is if you have this chart filled out, and okay, well, we're really concerned about this and this and this, and we're probably less concerned about this, okay? Unless you could clearly define what you want to protect against, then you really don't have much to base your decision on for purchasing any sort of technology. And that's where, the amazing InfoSec marketers who scare you into buying their product will get you. But the thing is, if you know what you're trying to avoid, and you realize that these guys' product, this is a snake oil, it's a little bit small. These guys' product only protects against this and this, and really, you already have something protecting against your biggest concern, then, why purchase expensive security software that you may not need? My rule of thumb when it comes to purchasing software for security is if the company's SEO and marketing is better than their ability to explain technically what they do in a clear and consistent manner, they don't even bother because it's all sales, okay? There's very few security vendors who do this. Yeah, let's get rid of that snake oil. So this is basically what I want you guys to start doing. Start filling this out. What is important to your merchants? What are they trying to avoid? And build the defenses based on that. Because at the end of the day, merchants are the most important part of our ecosystem. And if you're wasting their time building defenses that they don't need or is unimportant to them, then we're just all wasting time, right? And we also not focusing on what might be causing problems for them. Really, I could stop here. I really could stop here because I think with this, if everybody in this room starts doing this, then we have a little bit more push towards doing things properly, okay? And we're not basing our security on, hopefully it works, hopefully we don't get hacked. But instead, I'm gonna dive into a little bit of these tried and true defensive measures. And it depends on how time goes, we'll cut it short, but at the end I have something extra for you. And the way I think about these is a playbook. I know a playbook is a North American term, but it's based in North American football where you have two sides, an offensive side and a defensive side, and they both have a plan. If we consider the hackers as the offensive side and us as the defensive side, we don't know what their plan is, right? But we could set up our technologies in such a way that whatever they really try, you know, we got them covered, okay? I didn't really expect to have to plan this, but then I realized I was halfway around the world. So my playbook for security usually starts with making sure merchants know how to think about security. Again, this is an incredibly deep topic I'm not going to dive into, but I have given multiple talks about it in the past. Just grab that video if you want another half an hour of me speaking about how to think about security. The main takeaway from that is when you start along this path of putting in defensive measures for your store, you think people first. Make sure you have the human beings in your organization who are going to advocate for security, be responsible for security, and then once you have that one person or two people in your organization doing that, you don't need me, you don't need this talk because they will provide all of this. They will guide you towards this. So build your security teams people first, and then process. Technology comes last because it doesn't matter what VPN you use. It doesn't matter what encryption you use. If you're not using it and if the people are not using it and the process to use it does not exist, then you might as well not have them, okay? So focus on having the people who are responsible for advocating for security within your organization first, and they will establish the processes to make sure that whatever's happening with respect to your store is going to be legit. And then the technology, they'll figure that out at the end, okay? That's a big takeaway of when you think about security. Don't think about technology first. Think about people and processes first. And processes is part of the rest of the playbook. The second defensive strategy that I really like is establishing security processes. And this is dive deeper into the video I linked a couple slides ago. But the most important takeaway of establishing security processes for your company is you need to have them documented. If they're not documented, as far as I'm concerned, they don't exist. You need to have a consistent process for setting up servers, for managing patches, for doing everything related to security. You should have a consistent process. What it's going to do is make you more efficient at defending your stores and make your stores stronger. I know I sound like a magician up here promising you like less work and a stronger store, but this is not snake oil. I'm not selling you anything. I'm just telling you, if you get this right, it's going to do wonders for your confidence in the security of your store and the confidence of customers in your stores. Okay. And one quick note: when you are setting up security processes for your store, have a feedback loop. Figure out what's working, what's not working. Maybe 3 months down the line, you've realized that okay, this one process is just taking too much effort from our business and whatnot. It's good to have some sort of feedback loop. I'm going to quickly skip over this. Patching and upgrade processes. Magento usually patches on Tuesdays. Most companies send out patches on Tuesdays. Sometimes it's on Wednesdays and Thursdays. These things are unavoidable. But don't always think about patching and upgrading Magento. You should be doing your entire stack. PHP, MySQL, Apache, Linux, everything needs to be upgraded. If you're on Commerce Cloud, again, you just keep an eye on what's happening. Make sure your entire stack is patched. And one quick thing, be aware that Magento sometimes patches their patches. So, allocate time for that. The big thing is implementing and practicing an incident response plan. Most of what we're talking here about is defensive. This may seem as a reactive security measure, but here is the important thing. This is a defensive measure because implementing a response plan before anything happens to your store, if anything ever happens to your store, is a defensive measure because when you have a security incident, having a plan, a practice plan, makes a world of a difference. Your entire team is not running around like chickens with their head cut off. Oh my God, we've been hacked. That doesn't happen. It's like, okay, we have an incident, we know what to do because we have a plan and we've practiced it. I don't know how much more to stress this. I've been trying to push this incident response plan for years now. It's my hope that every Magento merchant has one. And the important thing about an incident response plan is that, remember the spin we put on loss of brand trust? This is pivotal to making sure you don't lose that brand trust, that compounding loss of income that could follow you doggedly for years. This incident response plan is pivotal for preventing that, okay? And in case you're asking what is an incident response plan, don't worry. I have a Magento one set up and it's on the web and you're free to use it. Grab this, implement it, practice it. Run through a mock incident and see how your team responds to the incident and see what gaps exist. Did you have no way to escalate with your hosting partner? Did you miss something, okay? So feel free to grab this and it's yours to use. It's open source, feel free to contribute, it's on GitHub. This is probably the biggest thing that will prevent you from losing that compounding brand trust problem in the future. And as we keep going through the defenses, we start getting diminishing returns for more and more effort. So I'm going to skip through most of these. There is links to all the information. The slides will be online. They're not online right now. But at the end, be aware that once you start getting into items like firewalls and penetration testing, you start looking at the technology side of defense. And I call these intermediate because unless you get those basics done of the incident response plan, thinking about security properly, it doesn't make sense like wasting time looking at firewalls, okay? Here's the last thing. The slides are online, but this playbook that I've been talking about is also on GitHub. And everything that I may have skipped in trying to hit the time, it's there. And I want this to be a living document that we all work towards in building a playbook that everybody in the Magento sphere could rely on and start implementing so that if we make all stores stronger, then as an agency, if you pick up a store, then they have these processes in place and these systems in place to make sure that it makes life easier for you. And as a merchant, if you adopt an agency or developers, you have a meaningful way of speaking with them. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we do, the hackers still exist. And that's it. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Talesh. Anyone, if you want to ask any questions, you have time. I'll pass the mics. If you have anything specific, anything related to security, or if you're facing any problems, you can right now ask.
Hi, thank you. About the intermediate part on penetration testing.
Yes.
Yeah, and the firewalls, right? Can you actually tell us more as in?
Okay, so the reason I mark this as intermediate, okay? these are technical solutions, okay? Implementing a firewall takes effort to do right, okay? Someone's gonna sell you a firewall and say it's gonna protect against anything. But unless you have all of these basics, set up,
but
a firewall's
most of
not
the
gonna help
cases
you.
nowadays, like the e-commerce platform is like in the cloud.
Sorry?
And e-commerce platform is in the cloud. Like for instance, Magento, we just subscribe to a particular domain. We install the Magento. So it's very much dependent on the service provider on their firewalls. But like for instance, penetration testing, we may have hired a developer to help us develop the Magento.
Right.
But as for penetration testing, I mean, usually, who do we actually approach to do this kind of tests?
So, if I go back, all the way back, people. Once you have the right people within your organization, they'll be able to help you figure out what type of penetration testing you need. There's a lot of penetration testing services out there, but they scale to very high enterprise to a guy in his basement, okay? What you need depends on the size of your business. Okay, there's some merchants on Magento who run very small. There's some gigantic, like Cathay Pacific runs Magento. I mean, Cathay Pacific is gigantic, right? So basically you're asking me a question and the only answer I can give you is like, how long is a piece of string? I can't tell you how to do penetration testing. You need those people within your organization who are empowered with the domain knowledge and the technical solution that you build to help you do this. This is not an easy thing to get into, which is why it's intermediate and it's not basic, okay? What I would suggest when you're looking for a penetration testing company is that they don't give you a PDF. Mind you, I have done work for people and I've given them a PDF because that's what they wanted. When you select a penetration tester, they should be putting bugs into your bug tracking system for your developers to fix, okay? Or your system administrator to work on. Don't look for somebody who's just going to throw a PDF across the wall and say, pay me, because then you get the lazy penetration testers, okay? Look for someone who's going to be a little bit more involved and work with your system. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, good.
Yeah, thank
you
Talesh.
guys.